Good afternoon, everyone. We are waiting on a few people to join here. Thanks for joining us for our finance enhancement preview. We've got some very exciting things to share. All right. So if you're here for the finance enhancement preview, you are in the right place. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. If you don't know me, my name is Chris Dolan. I am the head of product here at TouchPoint Software, which basically means it's my pleasure to serve alongside our development team and really alongside all the teams to hear people's feedback and ideas and figure out how do we continue to enhance and develop the product to provide tools and features that will help you serve and know your people better. So that's our goal. That's what I do. And I am joined here by a special guest that needs no introduction. He's got a following and a fan club here at TouchPoint. The one and only Mike Smith, who wears lots of hats, but today he is going to be the finance guru hat. So, Mike, you want to say hello here?
Hello, and finance guru is not the title I chose for myself. The more I learn about this area, the more aware I am of my ignorance, but we'll do our best.
Well, Mike, it's a pleasure to be doing a webinar with you. I think this is the first time I've ever been on a webinar with you, even though we've led some workshops, I guess, together at Summit. So, so today, like I said, we're going to be going over some changes to the system that are coming. But before we do that, I want to cover kind of first, I want to say thank you because a lot of you all on this call actually helped speak into some of these changes. So either through feedback that you provided over email, or I know we actually had not formal focus groups, but kind of some informal sessions with a number of churches here that were able to provide feedback both before the process as well as kind of after we finished the designs to make sure we didn't miss anything. And so we're going to be going through and talking about what those changes are. But I wanted to first just thank all of those that helped participate in that. And then kind of talk about what are some of the goals that we laid out before we even started this process. And so I'm going to cover those right now, and then we'll talk about the different phases of this project, primarily today focusing on phase one. So the goals were, one, we wanted to simplify the reconciliation process. As we talked with many of you, we heard we have a good reconciliation process. We thought we could make it great. And I really think that after you see what we're about to present today, you will agree with us that this is about to be really great. And so we're really excited about that. Number two, we just wanted to provide an easier user experience, user interface. And so there's some really cool designs that we've added to this that I think will just make the whole process that much easier. Hopefully save you some clicks, save you some steps, save you time that you can focus on other things, other ways to serve your church. We wanted to combine contributions and transactions. And you've probably heard us say, not all contributions are a transaction and not all transactions are a contribution. And so there's some new things that we'll be pointing out here of how we did that. For example, we created a new transaction type called non-contribution because we'll have things like event registrations that can show up in the contributions log, or actually it's going to be one place. This is in a later phase, but it's going to be one place. Or offline gifts or offline transactions are not really transactions. Transactions have traditionally been only online. And so you'll see how we combine those to be able to have all of those things in one place. And then as part of this process, we realized pledges didn't really make sense to be in contributions and transactions. They relate. So the back end, it's still going to be the same, but we are going to have a separate management place for pledges. They will no longer be in batches or bundles. They'll no longer be in the contribution search. They'll be in their own place. And you'll see that in what we demo here. So those are the goals that we set out. And we're doing this in several different phases. And today we're really focused on showing off what has been developed so far, which is phase one. And we've done a lot, but this is going to be a 3-phase project. And so today is giving you a preview of what is coming. It's basically in kind of our final testing or going into final testing. We've already done some testing and will be deployed I'll get into the timeline on that, deployed very soon. And then we've actually already started on phase 2, and then phase 3 will be after that. But what is included in phase 1 is what you might be asking. And this is what we're going to cover today. So first is account code standardization. As we realize, combining contributions and transactions, every transaction really needs, gifts have a fund, but event registrations should have an account code, but it's only as good as a person setting up that registration is entering one. And so now that has been standardized, and we'll show you what that means. It's a drop down now. You don't have to remember those codes. Your finance team can go and enter them, get them organized, get them cleaned and standardized, where it's very easy for staff to just go and select those. Number 2 is a new batch search page. So the current bundles page, and maybe I've already kind of let this cat out of the bag here a little bit. Bundles will no longer be called bundles in this new interface. We're actually going to be calling everything batches, and that kind of gives you a hint at what's coming in phase 2, which I'll talk about after we demo this. But there's a new search page to allow you to manage these batches very easily and find the appropriate batch. The next piece here is that there's a new batch entry page. I'm not going to get into details on here. I don't want to steal Mike's thunder. And then the 4th part of phase 2 is this new pledge management page. And so I won't go into details on that as well, but I guess basically I'll turn it over to you, Mike, who's going to walk us through, and we can kind of have a conversation together about what people can expect and see actual live production code. It's not production code. It's still in the develop branch right now, but it's been developed, and it's gone through quite a few rounds of testing already, and we're really excited to show it off. So, Mike.
All right, let's start with account codes. So here we are on a registration, and you may be familiar with the fees tab. And there's an opportunity to enter an account code. In the past, now it's a drop-down menu, as Chris indicated, and this should make it really easy for you to enter an account code and also eliminate error. And like almost every drop-down in our system, this is in a lookup code. And you can access that in the usual place, but we've also added a new menu option to find that under Finance Setup Account Codes. And here you will see all your account codes. We are migrating your current account codes into your lookup codes, and they will come over in this format with the code and the description just the same. You will of course want to change the description to a more user-friendly name. And then also you will want to, after you do that for your currently used account codes, you will want to either inactivate account codes that aren't being used, or if you know that you'll never use these, you can merge and delete them into a code that's in use. And once that's done, then you'll have that handy drop-down menu, and your people setting up registrations will just be able to select the appropriate accounting code from that. As usual, although your people will be seeing the English translation here, the description, the code itself will appear in parentheses after the registration name in some of our reports. All right, so let's jump into the meat of this and look at the batches search page. Now, this replaces, as Chris said, this replaces the bundle page. The bundle page never had search criteria, and this does. And so you will now be able to search for batches based on a date range, on an amount range, On batch type, which in the current language is just your bundle header types, and then also by status. You're familiar with open and closed statuses. Those are still available and mean what they meant before. But you'll see that there are two other statuses now available. There is a pending and a reconciled. I will let Chris describe to you the purpose of the pending status when he talks about phase 2 and beyond. Reconciled is a status that you can give batches that you have already verified that they match your bank statements. So again, Chris will say more about this and how it will relate to future phases. But if you have closed a batch, if you have then verified that the amount matches your bank deposits, then you can take the further step of marking it as reconciled. Chris is selecting a number of batches there, and then in mass they can be marked as reconciled. You may have noticed also on that menu that there is a report option. And so there is the opportunity to select a number of batches and run a report on them. So here is several batches selected, and then the details below. Some of you may recognize this as an enhancement to the bundle report 2. And this is the first one that we have available. We will be making others available as well. So a variety of reports available to you that we will have in recipes. You can select the report you want, and much like the current bundle report, you'll be able to select in a setting which report that you use. Also, you notice that there is an X9 export on this menu. If your church is currently set up for remote deposit capture using X9 files, then this menu option will be there. If your church is set up with the newer scan and deposit, then there will be a deposit option at this point in the menu. All right, let's take a look at creating a bundle. Batch, I'm sorry, it's going to take a while for me to get used to this new terminology. So with new batch, we have some of the same options as before. The batch type, which corresponds to the current bundle type. You can enter an estimated amount, which is not new, but what is new is entering an estimated count. And then, of course, you can set a default contribution date and a default fund. The source is new. This also is a lookup code that you can manage. And these 4 defaults have been provided for you. This tells you the general source from which these contributions are coming. And then the type refers to the contribution type, tax deductible, non-tax, etc. Most of this is not new to you except for the non-contribution that Chris has already mentioned that is now available to you. For example, if you are scanning checks that have been brought to the office for registration payment balances or something like that. We'll talk more about that later as we dig into editing a batch. So we see at the beginning, the attention getting red here lets you know that your batch is currently not balanced. And as you add entries, then the goal, of course, would be that both the amount and the count will match. And if they don't, you can make changes as appropriate. So as we add an entry by clicking on the button, and this is new also, new area for adding contribution entries. Chris is adding an envelope number there to select Robin Cook, and it automatically entered her people ID and her name. And then other familiar fields as Chris works through this. We'll talk more about what you see at the bottom with soft credit and registration credit later. But now Chris is selecting a donor, showing more information, adding another entry. And then Chris, go ahead and add one more entry, and then let's take a look at splitting a contribution. So now we want to split this entry, and all that Chris needs to do is click on plus, enter the amount. You notice that as he entered the amount in the second entry of the split, the first amount changed automatically, and so that can be saved. And now we have one other thing I should point out while we're on this page is that we have an actual count of 3. Did you notice that? You may say, but wait, there are 4 entries, but actually there are only 3 checks. So this will be true of online transactions as well, that if they are split, the transaction itself will only count as 1 entry, even though it's been split. All right, so let's talk a little bit about soft credit and registration credit then. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we do that, yeah. I'm sorry, Chris. Yeah, we'll go forward with this. Go ahead and enter somebody. We'll balance this batch out a little bit later. So Chris is entering Haley now. And we'll take a look at registration credit here. So he's selecting a type of non-contribution because this is a registration payment that Haley has made. So he's entering the appropriate codes and the amount. And now when he clicks registration credit, he can select the event, the involvement, and then he can select the participant, Haley. And when he saves this, now Haley's balance on that event has been decreased by $100. This does not count as a contribution, though. It's a non-contribution type. All right. How about a soft credit this time? So now Foundation has made a gift. And we want the amount of the gift to be credited to the pledge balance for a donor. And so we simply select use soft credit, enter the name of the person who should receive the soft credit, and hit save. Now, soft credit is available on the user interface, but it is not fully wired up. So that will not be ready until phase 2. And so stay tuned for more about that. The registration credit, we are working actively to have that ready by phase 1. Now, we have finished entering into our bundle, and our actual amount doesn't match our estimated amount, and our count does not match either. And so we can easily change that now that we know what the actual amount should be. And when we do that, you see that we are now balanced. We're in the green, and we have the close batch button available to us now, and we can close this batch. So Chris has entered a reference ID for this batch, as well as the deposit date, and closed the batch. All right. We made reference earlier to scanning checks, and then either remotely depositing or using scan and deposit. So here's an example of a entry that has a scanned check. In this case, it's a scanned envelope in our test environment. And this is how that will look. You'll be able to show the check image as you enter information about this check. Now, as Chris indicated, what you won't find on any of these pages is anything about pledges, because we've broken that off. There's no pledge in the type anymore. We've broken that off and put that in a page of its own. And here's a mock-up of that page. So you'll be able to filter in much the same way. There'll be this nice report giving pledged and actual for various funds. And this is where you will do all your your pledge management. All right. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mike. Getting my audio and video back here. Great job running through that. It's a lot to cover. Don't worry if you missed anything, this will be recorded. We're going to get this documented. And so your team will have a chance to learn all of this before it goes live. But before we do that, and I talk about when it's going live, I wanted to talk about the other phases of this project, because that might answer. I know a lot of questions are coming in right now is, some things that we've alluded to that are coming. And so these are in separate phases. Phase 2 is actually underway right now. And I wanted to cover what that entails. And you might have already guessed some of this. The biggest part of this is really what's coming with phase 2, but we had to lay the foundation with phase 1. So all online transactions are going to eventually show in a batch. So what that means right now, you're aware that bundles only have contributions. Event registration payments or any kind of any item that processes through TouchPoint is going to show up in that batch now. Okay, so that's number one. The second part of it is that transactions are held in a pending batch until they're settled. So no longer will they go automatically into a batch. We are going to put them in a pending state, and I'll show you what this is going to look like. We're going to put them in a pending state, and then when they settle, when we get a settlement date, we will organize them into a batch for you. And that is the third part of this, is that batches will be organized by the settlement date. And so that's part of why we added this new field of source, because we are going to now designate the source, whether it's either an ACH or a bank card. And so those will be in separate batches so that they will match the deposit. And so the goal here is that your batches will be able to match your deposits in your bank, which means you'll no longer need the settlements report, which was previously known as I'm blanking on it right now, but the report that you can find in transactions, all of that will eventually go away. Yeah, the reconcile report, the settlements report, all of those things will eventually go away because it will all be replaced by your batches matching your deposits. And so those reports that we showed you on the batch search page, where you can run them by several at a time or individual, are really going to be key reports in terms of you being able to reconcile, and it'll be all in one simple place. Okay, and so let me show you a few of those things. Here, you could actually see that in what I was demoing when we put that check-in for $180 that Haley made for the women's retreat. Here's an example of that non-contribution amount. And the second thing I talked about was that your batches being organized by settlements pending. So there will be two batches that will just stay kind of pinned to the top here. They will be showing as a pending state, one for ACH and one for bank card. And those transactions will flow into here until they settle, at which point they will be added to a unique batch. Another thing we plan to do when those batches, they are added to batches, is we will automatically close them and match them up for you. If you need to make edits, you can, as someone with the appropriate role could open those and make edits to them. But we want to make it super easy for you, because in theory, there shouldn't need to be any edits to those. And so we want to close those so that all you have to do then at that point is to click on the box and either export them to be able to get a report to pull into your general ledger, or mark them as reconciled after you've taken those necessary steps. So this is what phase 2 is. There's a little bit of work that needs to be done on that, but as I said, we've already gotten started on this, and this is really where the simplification of the reconciliation process is going to happen. Phase 3 is pretty simple. It's really one main thing, which is contributions and transaction reports are going to be combined into one place. And so no longer will you have to go to transactions just for online things and contributions for online, for gifts, whether they're online or offline. Everything will be in one place. And so I've got a mock-up to show you of kind of what this looks like. There's some simplified search features across the top. There's some filters down the right-hand side. Like I said before, traditionally you've seen online things that would be your transactions, and we've renamed some of these to make them a little easier. Failed, no fee, discount codes. And then offline would be things like your cash check, external gifts made through a third-party system, gift in kind, and stock. This is cut off, but then there's type as well, which is where you'll be able to filter by either tax deductible, non-tax deductible, non-contribution, etc. And so all of those will show in here and have some really helpful totals. So as you're filtering, you'll be able to see those totals. Really powerful report. This is kind of part of phase 2, but it's going to be a third phase that we'll deploy at a separate time. And so we're very excited about this. This will make things a lot easier. One question you may be asking, or maybe wondering, is, well, what about people that just need to see transactions, or just, my staff shouldn't see all contributions? Well, those roles will be adjusted so that they will see this page, but they will only see the types of, say, non-contribution in that case, if they don't have finance access. So there's a lot more. And before we launch this phase, there will be another webinar where we'll show this in more depth and show you all the bells and whistles of this, because there's a lot of other things we've tried to simplify in this as well. And we'll do a webinar to show that off live on a database. So a few other just little logistics before I go into questions. Timeline. Phase 1, as I said, is for the most part, Mike was showing you live things with the exception of pledges. Pledges is very close to being done, but we didn't have it done enough to be able to show everything. So we just showed the mock-up. But our plan is to be deploying that, assuming all the testing goes well, in May. So we've been already testing it, putting it through the ringer, and we're really excited about the way that's coming together. Phase 2 is already started. And so we plan to be deploying that in early summer. Phase 3 is TBD. That new report, putting everything all in one place, is a big lift, but we're going to be working on it as quickly as possible to get it in your hands as quickly as possible after thorough testing. So that's the rough timeline. We will update you more as we know more dates, but you can expect phase 1 of this to be rolling out very soon. So if you are one of many people on a finance team, you might want to pass the recording of this webinar on to the rest of your folks on your team. If you have volunteers that enter gifts or things like that, this would be a good resource to share with them. We will be putting together, like I said, some documentation, some other training videos and things that will be made available as well before this goes live, because we want everybody to be comfortable and this to be very familiar with them, so that when this goes live, it's a very easy transition for you. So let me give you one quick update on TouchPoint Giving. You've heard us talk about this over the last year. This is part of our new parent company, and being under the part of the CAS family is that now we have both front end and back end of giving. We've always had front end. Now we do the processing as well. And so in parallel with this project that we've been talking about today, we have been working on some updates to TouchPoint Giving to build out some new dashboards and reports. These are just a few small snapshots of what's to come. that are going to be available to the TouchPoint giving churches. Everything I've talked about up until this slide is going to be available to all churches because it impacts just reconciliation and in general, but some of these reports are going to be specialized to the TouchPoint giving module and available only to those churches. So let me stop sharing my screen, and Mike, I'll ask you to join us back here, and we will open it up for some Q&A time. And try to answer as many of these questions as we can.
Yeah, so one question is character limits in the account codes. And just looking at the way the database is set up here, the answer to that is 100, both for the code and the description, 100 characters.
But what about special characters, Mike? I know we can use dashes. Can we use parentheses and things? I believe we can, but we'll make sure that that is supported. That's a very common thing. I don't know that I've actually seen that example tested, but I know we've tested some special characters because I've seen them just pull in from some of the past things. So we'll make sure of that. Somebody's asking here, will it be required that we utilize the reconciliation status? It's not required. It's really up to you. If you want to keep all of your bundles as closed, that's fine. We added it in because we think it's a helpful thing for you to differentiate between this is a bundle that's closed and this is one that I've actually reconciled with my general ledger, with my bank. You can, and we've also made it super easy for you to go and reconcile in mass all the closed bundles. So we think it will be a very helpful thing for you, but it's not necessarily something that is required. Can reports have a people ID included? Mike, do you want to speak to that one?
Yeah, absolutely. With any of the reports that we're creating for, that we demoed today, the report that we didn't even look at the report, Chris, of the
individual report. Yeah.
Individual report, but there is an individual report per batch, and then the multi-batch report. Any of those can be created with people IDs displayed.
Yeah, and they're really customizable. We're going to provide templates for you that we see as working well with some of the common GLs out there, but we do have some specialized reports for certain GLs, or if you need something customized, that can be done. Sometimes it might be an additional like consulting fee or development fee, but generally all of that can be done in special content. We're going to provide as many templates as we can for that so that you can just pick the one that works the best for you or adjust that as necessary. So someone's asking, can account codes sync with your finance system? So we don't have a connection with any of the finance systems, but you can adjust those account codes and enter as many as you want and right now it's a manual sync, but that's something we're open to kind of considering or looking at, or it could be possible, but right now it's a manual process to keep those synced. But you have the ability to set those, which ones are available, which ones you want to deactivate or disable. So, all right, there's a lot more. I'm going to keep scrolling down. So somebody's asking the total amount. We didn't show this, but it's showing a total amount, but next to that total amount, there's a little box that you can click on that will actually give you a breakout of cash versus checks. And it will also tell you the breakdown of if there's any ACH or bank card in there as well. It'd be rare that you would mix those. Ideally, those would be in their own bundle, but if you did mix those, there will be a breakdown of those, and it's just a click of a button and it shows you the details of that.
And just to be clear on that, that is for the actuals, right? That's not something that you would enter for estimated, but that will show you the actuals.
Let's see. So somebody's asking, is count just for checks? What about cash? So cash would be considered it depends on how you record that. If you're recording cash to an individual person, like in an envelope, then that would be considered one entry. If you're recording it to a person, so it's per person is what is considered an entry. If all your cash is just loose cash and you're associating that with an anonymous user, then that would all be considered one entry and count as one additional piece of the count. The pledge management screen, how does that interact with managed pledges page? So the managed pledges is, for those that aren't familiar with that, is kind of like recurring pledges where pledges are continually added. And so that's where you would set those up. And as a new period comes around, like a new month comes around and that pledge increases, another pledge would be added to the pledge management screen. So that's how those would interact. To be able to show you the total, because the pledge management is actually showing you to date what pledges have been made, whereas the managed pledges kind of calculates it out into the future. So non-cash deductible, I think you mean. So somebody's asking, do non-cash deductible contributions appear anywhere on the title? On the title statements? I'm assuming you're meaning tax statements. So let me clarify something. There's non-tax deductible contributions. There is an option where you can have them show on a tax statement. They show clearly as saying that they're not tax deductible, but you can have them show on a tax statement. The non-contribution, which is a new type, will not show on a tax statement. So that would be something for, say, the example where we used Haley making a $180 payment to the women's retreat. That would not show up. But if I'm giving through, say, a donor advised fund or through a foundation, and you want that to show on the statement, but do you want it to show clearly that it is a non-tax deductible contribution, you can choose as a church whether or not that shows on your tax statements or not.
There's a question about whether the batch import upload process has changed, and the answer to that is that it has not changed. You will still be able, if you have a custom upload, for example, in place, you'll still be able to use that.
Has the I missed what you just answered, Mike. I don't even remember. Oh, that's the one you just answered.
Yeah.
Somebody's asking about soft credits. So that's, Mike demoed this and talked about this a little bit, but it's the idea where, say, somebody gives through a foundation, you want the foundation is technically the one getting the tax credit for it. But if you want the person who maybe owns the foundation to get credit towards their pledge, that's how soft credits will work. Getting a question here about interactions with general ledger systems, and there's one name specifically here, but I'm just going to keep it kind of a general thing. We don't right now have any the only integration we have with a general ledger is through Sage Intacct, and that is because actually two of our Sage Intacct resellers have built an integration that is kind of complex because it has to pull the data and then import it, and it requires some middleware there to be able to do that. What we've done for other GLs is that we have some specialized reports that Mike showed, and we've given examples of, that can format the data in a way such that when you export it from TouchPoint, it's a simple import into your GL. So that is kind of the best we're able to do right now. There's possibilities, depending on the general ledger, that some of that could be a future project, but right now, most of them don't have that. They really just support like an export and then an import. And so that's what we've done. All right. There's a few more questions here, and kind of for the sake of time, we might just take one or two more of these. And if we haven't answered them, we will try to respond to these via email offline. But Mike, are you seeing any? I'm trying to read through them here.
There's a question about whether you can do a contribution entry entirely on the keyboard without moving your hand over to the mouse. And we did try to design that so that you can, with tabbing and that sort of thing, your fingers don't have to leave the keyboard.
Yeah, I was actually, as I was demoing it and Mike was talking, I was actually just using my keyboard and not my mouse, with the exception of a few things, like if you need to split one or if you need to change one of the defaults on things, there's some of that that you might need to, but we tried to tab and kind of skip over those default fields and make it super easy for you to do just from the keyboard. So for the sake of time, we might sign off here and we'll do our best to try to answer these questions offline. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Mike, special guest, for joining us here, and for everybody for joining us and learning about what's to come. We'd love your feedback if you have, if you think this is going to save you some time, if this is going to be a really positive thing for your finance team. That's what our hope is. Again, we're trying to build tools not for the sake of, technology, but for the sake of ministry. And we want to make these things as easy as possible, that take the lowest amount of time so that your teams can be focused on serving your churches in new and creative ways. So thank you for joining us for this. And we will keep you posted as we get closer to rolling these new features out. Thanks, everyone.